Black single mom got fired for being late. After helping an injured man, he was the billionaire. Tamara Lewis had never been the kind of woman life went easy on. At 28, she was a black single mother of two, 6-year-old Maya and 4-year-old Jordan, balancing nursing classes during the day and a demanding hotel housekeeping job at night. Every morning started the same: packing lunch boxes, smoothing Maya's hair into neat puffs, convincing Jordan to wear socks that matched, and praying the bus didn't arrive late. Her life was a careful balancing act, and every minute mattered. The hotel where she worked, the Silver Crown, was known for luxury, but behind the polished marble floors was a management team with zero sympathy for lateness. Tamara's boss, Miss Dwyer, made that clear every shift. "You have children? That's your problem. Be on time," she would say with her icy voice. Tamara endured it because she needed the job. Rent, school fees, uniform costs, and food for 2 growing kids didn't care about pride. But everything changed one rainy Thursday morning. Tamara had left home early, determined not to get even a minute behind schedule. She was halfway to the bus stop when she saw a car swerve to the side of the road, hazard lights blinking. The driver, a man, was slumped over the wheel, barely conscious. Tamara froze for 1 second. "If I stop, I'll be late. If I don't, he might die." Her heart made the choice for her. She rushed to the window, knocked hard, and when the man didn't respond, she forced the door open. Her nursing training kicked in, checking his pulse, loosening his collar, keeping his airway open, calling emergency services. The rain drenched her clothes, but she stayed with him, talking calmly until the ambulance arrived. By the time they took him away, she was 30 minutes late. She ran the rest of the way to the hotel, soaking wet, heart pounding. Miss Dwyer didn't even let her speak. "Save your excuses," she snapped. "You're fired. Clean out your locker." Tamara tried to explain about the man, about the ambulance, but Miss Dwyer simply waved her hand. "I don't care what story you made up." Tamara walked out of the hotel in tears. No job, no income, no idea how she would pay rent that month. What she didn't know was that the man she helped wasn't just any stranger. He was Elijah Grant, a billionaire tech investor and philanthropist, one of the most powerful men in the city. And when he regained consciousness in the hospital, the first thing he asked was, "Where is the young woman who saved my life?" He would soon discover she had been fired because of him. And what he did next would turn Tamara's entire world upside down. Before we dive deeper into this powerful story, I need you to do something quick for me. Drop a comment right now telling me where you're watching from and what time it is. And if you're new to this channel and you love these emotional, justice-filled stories where good people finally get what they deserve, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss when I drop these incredible stories. Your support means everything. Now, let's get back to Tamara and Elijah. Tamara Lewis's life had been a series of increasingly difficult circumstances for as long as she could remember. She'd grown up in a working-class neighborhood, raised by a single mother who'd worked 2 jobs to keep a roof over their heads. Tamara had watched her mother struggle, had seen the exhaustion and stress take physical toll, had vowed she'd build different life for herself. She'd been a good student in high school, maintained decent grades despite working part-time to help with household expenses. She'd gotten pregnant at 21 unplanned, but not entirely unwelcome with Maya. The baby's father, Derek, had promised to step up, to be present, to build family together. Those promises had lasted approximately 3 months after Maya's birth before he'd walked away, leaving Tamara to navigate new motherhood alone. Tamara had dropped out of her community college nursing program when Maya was born, needing to work full-time to support them both. She'd found employment at various retail and service jobs over the following years, each barely paying enough to cover childcare and rent. When she'd gotten pregnant again 2 years after Maya, another unplanned pregnancy with a different man who'd also disappeared. Once the reality of fatherhood became clear, Tamara had felt her dreams of finishing nursing school slipping further away. But she'd refused to give up completely. When Jordan was 2 and both children were in daycare, Tamara had enrolled in evening classes at the community college, determined to finally complete her nursing degree. It had meant working full-time during the day, attending classes 3 evenings per week, studying whenever the kids were asleep, and constantly juggling schedules that never quite aligned smoothly. The job at the Silver Crown Hotel had been the most stable employment Tamara had found. The pay wasn't great, barely above minimum wage, but it was consistent. The hours were regular evening shifts that allowed her to attend daytime classes, and the hotel provided basic benefits, including health insurance. She'd been working there for 18 months, maintaining impeccable attendance despite the logistical nightmare of coordinating childcare, classes, and work shifts. Miss Caroline Dwyer, the housekeeping supervisor, had been difficult from Tamara's first day. She was a white woman in her mid-50s who'd worked at the Silver Crown for 20 years, rising through the ranks from housekeeper to supervisor. She ran her department with rigid authoritarianism, showing no flexibility for employees' personal circumstances and making particular examples of the Black and Latina housekeepers when they had any attendance or performance issues. "You people always have excuses," Miss Dwyer had said once when another Black housekeeper had asked to leave early for a family emergency. "Child sick, car broken, bus late, always something. Maybe if you planned better, you wouldn't have constant crises." Tamara had witnessed Miss Dwyer's racism multiple times, but had stayed silent, terrified of losing the job she desperately needed. She'd watched colleagues get written up for being 2 minutes late, while white employees received verbal warnings for the same infractions. She'd seen Miss Dwyer assign the hardest, most physically demanding rooms to Black housekeepers, while giving easier assignments to white staff. She'd experienced Miss Dwyer scrutinizing her work with microscopic attention while barely checking white employees' rooms. But Tamara had endured because she had no choice. Single mothers working while attending school didn't have the luxury of standing up to discriminatory supervisors. She'd needed that paycheck, those benefits, the schedule that barely worked but did work enough to keep all the pieces of her life from completely falling apart. The Thursday morning that changed everything had started typically chaotic. Tamara had woken at 5:30 a.m. to prepare breakfast for Maya and Jordan, pack their lunches, lay out their clothes, and get herself ready for her 8 a.m. class. The children had been cranky, Jordan refusing to eat his oatmeal, Maya crying about a lost hair ribbon, and by the time Tamara had dropped them at her neighbor Mrs. Patterson's apartment, Mrs. Patterson watched them in the mornings before school, in exchange for Tamara watching Mrs. Patterson's grandson 2 afternoons weekly. She'd been running 5 minutes behind her usual schedule. "I'll be back by 3 to get them to afternoon daycare," Tamara had promised Mrs. Patterson. "Class ends at 2:30, so I should have plenty of time." She'd rushed to catch the 7:15 bus that would get her to campus by 7:50, giving her 10 minutes to reach her classroom. The bus had been on time, thankfully, and Tamara had spent the 20-minute ride reviewing her notes for the day's pharmacology quiz. While trying to ignore her rumbling stomach, she'd skipped breakfast to save those few minutes, getting the kids ready. Class had gone well. Tamara had felt confident about the quiz, had taken detailed notes during the lecture, had even asked a clarifying question about medication administration protocols. These morning classes were what she lived for, the hours when she was Tamara the nursing student rather than Tamara the struggling single mother, when she could focus on building the career that would eventually lift her family out of poverty. After class, Tamara had rushed to the library to study for 2 hours before her 11:30 shift start at the hospital, where nursing students did clinical rotations. She'd grabbed a granola bar from her bag for lunch, knowing she couldn't afford cafeteria food when every dollar mattered. The clinical shift had been exhausting, 3 hours of patient care under supervising nurses' watchful eye, practicing skills she'd learned in class, trying to absorb every lesson because soon this would be her actual career. By the time clinical had ended at 2:30, Tamara had been physically drained, but had needed to keep moving. Pick up kids from Mrs. Patterson, get them to afternoon daycare, rush home to change into her hotel uniform, catch the 4:15 bus that would get her to the Silver Crown by 5 to 20 minutes before her 5:30 shift start. But that Thursday, the daycare had called at 3:15 while Tamara was on the bus heading to Mrs. Patterson's apartment. "Miss Lewis, Jordan has a fever. He needs to be picked up immediately. And Maya can't stay without her brother here, so you'll need to get them both." Panic had flooded through Tamara, If she picked up the kids now, she couldn't leave them anywhere for her work shift. Mrs. Patterson watched mornings only, not evenings. Tamara's mother lived 2 hours away and worked evenings herself. She had no other childcare backup. "Can you keep them just until 5:30? Tamara had pleaded. "I need to get to work, and then I can—" "State regulations," the daycare director had interrupted firmly. "Children with fevers must be picked up within 1 hour of notification. If you're not here by 4:15, we'll have to call Child Protective Services." Tamara had wanted to cry. Calling out sick from work would get her written up. She'd already used both her allowed sick days that month when Maya had had strep throat, but leaving her children at daycare while Jordan was sick wasn't an option either. She'd called the hotel, reaching Miss Dwyer's extension with shaking hands. "Miss Dwyer, this is Tamara Lewis. My son is sick at daycare and I need to pick him up. I'm so sorry, but I can't make it to my shift tonight. Is there any way I could—" "Absolutely not." Miss Dwyer had cut her off coldly. "Miss Lewis, you've already called out twice this month. We cannot accommodate another absence. If you don't show up for your shift tonight, consider it a voluntary resignation." "But my son has a fever," Tamara had protested desperately. "The daycare says I have to pick him up immediately. I don't have anyone else who can." "Not my problem," Miss Dwyer had stated flatly. "You chose to have children. Managing their care is your responsibility. Be here at 5:30 or don't bother coming back." The line had gone dead. Tamara had sat on that bus fighting tears, trying to figure out impossible logistics. She'd ended up calling her classmate Monica, practically begging her to pick up the kids and keep them at her apartment for just a few hours until Tamara's shift ended. "Please, Monica, I'll lose my job if I don't show up. I'll pay you. I'll babysit for you anytime. I'll do your laundry for a month, please. I'm desperate." Monica had agreed, bless her, and had met Tamara at the daycare to collect Maya and Jordan. "Just text me when your shift ends and I'll bring them home," Monica had said, holding fevered Jordan gently. "Go. Don't worry about them. Just don't lose your job." Tamara had made it to work with 3 minutes to spare, her heart still racing from the crisis. Miss Dwyer had been waiting at the time clock, watching deliberately as Tamara had punched in at exactly 5:27 p.m. "Cutting it close, Miss Lewis," Miss Dwyer had observed coldly. "Perhaps you should build more buffer time into your schedule rather than arriving at the last possible second." Tamara had bitten back her response about how she'd been managing a sick child crisis, knowing that showing any defensiveness would just make things worse. "Yes, ma'am. It won't happen again." But as Tamara had started her shift that evening, 8 hours of intensive cleaning, changing linens, scrubbing bathrooms, vacuuming rooms, she'd felt crushing weight of her circumstances. One more crisis, one more complication, one more impossible choice between her children's needs and her job's demands, and the carefully balanced structure of her life would collapse completely. The next morning, Friday, Tamara had woken to discover Jordan's fever had broken overnight. Crisis averted. She'd gotten both children ready and to Mrs. Patterson's on time, made her bus, arrived at her 8 a.m. class with 5 minutes to spare. Everything had felt back under control, until she'd seen the car. It had been 7:40 a.m., Tamara walking the final 3 blocks from the bus stop to campus, when she'd noticed the vehicle pulled halfway onto the sidewalk, hazard lights flashing weakly in the early morning drizzle. The rain had been light but steady, turning everything grey and slick. Tamara's first instinct had been to walk past. She'd had 3 minutes to get to class, couldn't afford to be even slightly late, needed to maintain her perfect attendance in the nursing program because her entire future depended on completing this degree. But as she'd gotten closer, she'd seen the man slumped over the steering wheel. The car's engine was still running, the driver's side window slightly open, and something about his position, head tilted at an unnatural angle, body completely still, had triggered every alarm bell from her nursing training. Tamara had frozen for exactly 3 seconds, internal debate raging. If I stop, I'll be late for class. But if I don't stop, and he dies. Her training had overridden her fear of consequences. She'd rushed to the driver's window, knocking firmly on the glass. Sir, can you hear me?" No response. The man had been maybe 50 years old, well-dressed in expensive suit, clearly on his way somewhere important before whatever medical crisis had struck. His breathing had been shallow and irregular. Tamara had recognized the pattern immediately from her classes. This was someone in serious medical distress. She'd tried the door handle locked, knocked harder on the window. "Sir, I'm a nursing student. I'm going to get you help. Can you unlock the door?" The man's eyes had fluttered open briefly, unseeing and confused, before closing again. His hand had fumbled toward the door locks, missing the button entirely. Tamara had pulled out her phone, dialing 911 while simultaneously assessing what she could see through the window. "I need an ambulance at the corner of 5th and Madison Avenue. There's a man, unconscious in a vehicle, appears to be having some kind of medical emergency. He's breathing but unresponsive. I can't access him because the doors are locked." While she'd waited for the operator's questions, Tamara had continued knocking on the window, trying to rouse the man enough to unlock the door. Finally, on her 4th attempt, his hand had connected with the unlock button. She'd immediately opened the door, the man nearly falling out before she'd caught him. "Sir, I'm Tamara. I'm a nursing student. Can you tell me your name? Can you tell me what happened?" The man had managed to open his eyes, looking at her with obvious confusion. "I don't feel." His words had trailed off, eyes rolling back. Tamara's training had kicked in completely then. She'd checked his pulse, rapid and thready. Not good. Checked his airway patent but breathing shallow. Loosened his collar and tie to help his breathing. Positioned him so he wouldn't aspirate if he vomited. All the while staying on the line with 911, providing updates on his condition. "Does he have any medical alert jewelry?" the operator had asked. "Can you check his wallet for medical information?" Tamara had quickly checked expensive watch. No medical alert bracelet. She'd hesitated about going through his pockets, conscious of boundaries even in emergency, but had ultimately checked his suit jacket, finding a wallet. Inside had been multiple credit cards, significant cash, and a driver's license identifying him as Elijah Marcus Grant, age 53, with an address in the wealthiest neighborhood in the city. "His name is Elijah Grant," Tamara had reported. "I don't see any medical alert cards in his wallet, but there are multiple prescriptions in his jacket pocket." She'd pulled out the pill bottles, reading labels to the operator. "Looks like blood pressure medication, cholesterol medication, and this one is for diabetes. Metformin something." "Metformin," the operator had confirmed. "He's likely having a hypoglycemic episode combined with possible cardiac event. The ambulance is 2 minutes away. Stay with him. Keep him conscious if possible. Don't let him drive." Tamara had stayed, kneeling in the rain beside this stranger's car, holding his hand and talking to him calmly. "Mr. Grant, help is coming. Just stay with me. What were you doing this morning? Where were you headed?" The man had mumbled something incoherent about meetings and hospitals and important calls, but at least he'd been responsive. Tamara had kept him talking, kept him conscious, kept monitoring his breathing and pulse until the ambulance had finally arrived. The paramedics had taken over efficiently, asking Tamara questions about what she'd observed, nodding approvingly when she'd provided clear, detailed medical information about his presentation and the medications she'd found. "You probably saved his life," one paramedic had told her. "If he'd stayed unconscious in that car another 20 minutes, the outcome could have been very different. Good work, student nurse." They'd loaded Elijah Grant onto the stretcher, securing him in the ambulance. One paramedic had turned back to Tamara. "Do you want to ride with us to the hospital? You could provide more detailed information to the ER doctors." Tamara had looked at her phone 8:14 a.m. She was already 14 minutes late for class. Riding to the hospital would make her miss class entirely. "I can't," she'd said, the words physically painful to speak. "I have class. I'm already late. But please tell the doctors everything I told you. His medications, his symptoms, everything." "Will do," the paramedic had assured her. "Thanks again for stopping. Not everyone would have." The ambulance had driven away, sirens wailing, and Tamara had stood there in the rain, soaking wet, shaking from adrenaline, staring at her phone, trying to calculate how much trouble she was in for being late. She'd run the rest of the way to campus, arriving at her classroom at 8:22, 22 minutes late. Her professor had looked up from the lecture, expression stern. "Miss Lewis, how kind of you to join us." "I'm so sorry, Professor Chen," Tamara had said breathlessly. "There was a medical emergency on my way here. A man collapsed in his car and I had to call 911 and stay with him until the ambulance arrived. I have the incident number if you need verification." Professor Chen's expression had softened. "Are you all right? Was anyone seriously injured?" "The man was having some kind of medical crisis. The paramedics said I probably saved his life by stopping. But I'm fine, just wet from the rain." "Take your seat, Miss Lewis. We'll count this as excused given the circumstances, but please see me after class to provide the incident details for our records." Tamara had collapsed into her seat, relief washing over her. At least her professor had been understanding. At least her perfect attendance wouldn't be marked as an absence. Everything would be okay. She hadn't known yet that by Monday morning, her entire life would implode, not because she'd been late to class, but because helping that stranger had made her late for something far more consequential. That Friday had passed in a blur of classes, studying and picking up her children from daycare. Jordan's fever had stayed down, thank God, and both kids had been in good moods. Tamara had spent the weekend catching up on homework, doing laundry, meal prepping for the week ahead, and trying not to think about how precariously balanced her life was one more crisis away from complete collapse. Monday morning had started with the usual chaos. Maya couldn't find her favorite shoes, Jordan had spilled juice on his shirt, requiring a complete outfit change, and Tamara had been running 7 minutes behind schedule when they'd finally made it to Mrs. Patterson's apartment. "I'll be back by 3, Tamara had promised, already mentally calculating that she'd need to skip lunch to make up the time she'd lost that morning. She'd caught the 7:20 bus 5 minutes later than her usual, which meant arriving at campus at 7:55 instead of 7:45. Still plenty of time to get to her 8 a.m. class, she'd thought. Everything was fine, except she'd forgotten about her work shift. Tamara had been so focused on getting back on schedule after Friday's emergency, so relieved that Jordan was healthy and she hadn't missed any classes, that she'd completely forgotten she'd picked up an extra morning shift at the Silver Crown for that Monday. The hotel had been hosting a major conference and had needed additional housekeeping staff for early morning room turnovers. Tamara had agreed to work 6 a.m. to noon, planning to skip her morning classes and go straight to her afternoon clinical rotation. But in the chaos of the weekend and Monday morning's rush, she'd completely forgotten. Her phone had started ringing at 6:15 a.m. while she'd been in the middle of convincing Jordan to put on pants. She'd ignored it, assuming it was a spam call. It had rung again at 6:30 and 6:45. By the time she'd actually checked her phone at 7:30 while riding the bus to campus, she'd had 12 missed calls from the Silver Crown and a voicemail from Miss Dwyer that had made her blood run cold. "Miss Lewis, this is Caroline Dwyer. You were scheduled to work at 6 a.m. this morning, and you are now over an hour late with no call, no explanation. This is job abandonment. Do not bother coming in. Come to my office tomorrow at 9 a.m. to collect your final paycheck and turn in your uniform. You're terminated." Tamara had listened to that message 3 times, her hands shaking so badly she'd nearly dropped her phone. She'd completely forgotten the shift. In her defense, it had been added to her schedule only last Thursday, and Friday's emergency had pushed it completely out of her mind. But Miss Dwyer wouldn't care about reasons. She'd made her policy clear. Lateness was unacceptable. Missing shifts was grounds for immediate termination. Tamara had immediately called back, reaching the hotel's main line since Miss Dwyer apparently wasn't answering her direct extension. "Silver Crown Hotel, how may I direct your call? I need to speak with Caroline Dwyer in housekeeping, please. This is Tamara Lewis. It's urgent. One moment, please." The hold music had seemed to play for eternity before Miss Dwyer's cold voice had finally come on the line. "Miss Lewis, I assume you received my message. Miss Dwyer, I'm so sorry. I completely forgot about the Monday morning shift. It was added to my schedule last week, and with everything that happened Friday, the medical emergency, and my son being sick, it just slipped my mind. Please, I can come in right now. I can work a double shift to make up for it. Please don't fire me. I need this job. You should have thought about that before you abandoned your shift, Miss Dwyer had replied icily. Miss Lewis, this is not the first time you've had attendance issues. You called out twice last month, you were late several times the month before that, and now you've completely missed a shift without even bothering to call. This demonstrates a pattern of unreliability that we cannot tolerate. But I explained those absences, Tamara had protested desperately. My son had strep throat. He had to be picked up from daycare. I had to take him to urgent care. Those were legitimate medical emergencies. And the times I was late, those were all documented transportation issues. Miss Dwyer, please. I'm a good employee. My room inspection scores are always excellent. I never complain about difficult assignments. I work every holiday you need coverage. Please give me another chance. My decision is final, Miss Dwyer had stated. Come in tomorrow at 9 a.m. for your exit paperwork. If you don't show up, I'll mail your final check to the address on file. The line had gone dead. Tamara had sat on that bus crying silently, trying not to draw attention from other passengers, but completely unable to hold back tears. She'd just lost her job. Her stable, benefits-providing, bill-paying job. The job that had made it possible to attend nursing school while supporting 2 children. Gone. Because she'd forgotten one shift. She'd gotten off the bus at campus in a daze, walking to her classroom on autopilot. Professor Chen had been in the middle of lecturing when Tamara had slipped in late again, her second tardy that week, though this time she'd had no good excuse beyond being emotionally devastated. After class, Professor Chen had called Tamara aside. Miss Lewis, is everything all right? You've been late twice this week, and you look upset. If you're having difficulties, there are resources available to help students. And somehow, standing there in the empty classroom with this kind professor looking at her with genuine concern, Tamara had broken. She'd told Professor Chen everything about being a single mother working nights while attending school, about her son getting sick and the daycare crisis, about stopping to help the man having a medical emergency Friday morning, about forgetting her Monday morning shift in all the chaos and being fired as a result. I don't know what I'm going to do, Tamara had admitted, tears flowing freely. I needed that job, Professor Chen. Not just for the money, though, God knows I needed that too, but for the health insurance. My kids have insurance through my employer. If I'm terminated, they lose coverage. And I can't afford to pay for classes next semester without my paycheck. I'm going to have to drop out. Again, for the second time. And I was so close to finishing. Professor Chen had listened to all of this with deepening concern. Miss Lewis, Tamara, first. Take a breath. You're dealing with an overwhelming situation, but you have options. Let's talk about resources. The college has an emergency fund for students facing financial crises. It won't replace your lost wages, but it might help bridge the gap while you find new employment. There are also grant programs specifically for single parents completing nursing degrees. I've already applied for every grant I qualify for, Tamara had said. The emergency fund might help with 1 month's rent, but that's just delaying the inevitable. Without a job, I can't afford tuition, childcare, rent, any of it. I'm going to have to drop out, find full-time work, and maybe try again in a few years when the kids are older. Don't make that decision today, Professor Chen had urged. You're in crisis mode right now. Give yourself time to explore options before you give up on the degree you've worked so hard for. And Tamara, the man you helped Friday morning, the one having the medical emergency, did you get his name? Because what you did was extraordinary. You potentially saved his life, and you lost your job as an indirect result of that compassion. There might be. Well, it's a long shot, but there might be ways that could work in your favor. Tamara had pulled out her phone, scrolling back through her notes where she'd written down the information for her call with 911. His name was Elijah Grant. The paramedic said I should feel good about helping him, that not everyone would have stopped. But feeling good doesn't pay my rent, Professor Chen. Professor Chen had written down the name, her expression thoughtful. Elijah Grant. That name sounds familiar. Let me do some research. In the meantime, please make an appointment with the financial aid office. Explain your situation. See what emergency resources are available. And Tamara, don't give up yet. You're an excellent student with real compassion for patients. The nursing field needs people like you. Let's find a way to keep you in this program." Tamara had left that conversation feeling slightly less hopeless, though still terrified about her immediate future. She'd gone to her afternoon clinical rotation, running on autopilot, caring for patients while her mind had raced through impossible financial calculations. Rent was due in 2 weeks, $1,200. She no longer had any way to pay. Childcare for the following month would be another $800. Her final check from the Silver Crown might cover one of those, but not both. That evening, after picking up Maya and Jordan from daycare and getting them fed and into bed, Tamara had sat at her tiny kitchen table with a notebook, trying to figure out her options. Option 1. Find new employment immediately. But most jobs required 2 weeks between hiring and first paycheck. She didn't have 2 weeks before rent was due. And night shifts were hard to find. Most retail and service work was daytime hours that conflicted with her classes. She could drop out of school and take any available job, but that felt like admitting defeat. Option 2. Ask family for help. But her mother was struggling financially herself, barely making ends meet on her own single income. Her father had been out of the picture since Tamara was 12. She had no other close family with resources to help. Option 3. Apply for emergency assistance programs. She'd qualify for food stamps probably, maybe emergency housing vouchers. But those programs took time to process, time she didn't have with rent due so soon. Option 4. Grovel to Miss Dwyer, beg for her job back, accept whatever punishment or probation or humiliating conditions were required to keep employment. This option made Tamara feel sick, but it might be her only realistic choice. She'd been sitting there crying over her notebook when her phone had rung, unknown number, local area code. Normally she'd ignore it, but in her current state she'd answered, half hoping it was somehow a job opportunity or some other miraculous solution. "Hello? Is this Tamara Lewis?" A woman's voice, professional and warm. "Yes. Who's calling?" "Miss Lewis, my name is Patricia Huang. I'm the executive assistant to Elijah Grant. I understand you were the person who helped Mr. Grant last Friday when he had a medical emergency. Is that correct?" Tamara's heart had started racing. "Yes, that was me. Is he okay?" "The paramedics took him to the hospital, but I never heard what happened after that. Mr. Grant is recovering well, thanks largely to your quick action and medical knowledge," Patricia had replied. "The doctors said if you hadn't stopped to help him, he very likely would have died. Mr. Grant has been asking about you since he regained consciousness. He'd very much like to thank you in person. Would you be available to meet with him?" Yes, I suppose so," Tamara had said, completely confused about why a stranger would want to meet just to say thank you. "When were you thinking? Would tomorrow work? Say, 2 p.m. at Mr. Grant's office downtown? I can send a car to pick you up if transportation is an issue." Tomorrow was Tuesday, the day she was supposed to go to the Silver Crown to collect her final paycheck and turn in her uniform. "Actually, could we do Wednesday instead? I have something I need to handle tomorrow morning." "Wednesday at 2 p.m. works perfectly. I'll email you the address and building access instructions. Mr. Grant is very much looking forward to meeting you, Miss Lewis. You saved his life. He wants to express his gratitude properly." After hanging up, Tamara had Googled Elijah Grant, curious about who exactly she'd helped. The results had been staggering. Elijah Marcus Grant, age 53, founder and CEO of Grant Ventures, one of the most successful venture capital firms in the country. Estimated net worth, $3.2 billion. Philanthropist who donated hundreds of millions to various causes. Board member of multiple Fortune 500 companies. One of the most powerful and influential business leaders in the city. Tamara had helped a billionaire, an actual billionaire, and now he wanted to meet her. She'd had no idea what to expect from that meeting, but a small spark of hope had ignited. Maybe, just maybe, this was the miracle she desperately needed. Tuesday morning, Tamara had gone to the Silver Crown at 9 a.m. as instructed. She'd brought her uniform laundered and pressed, her employee badge, and her locker key. Miss Dwyer had been waiting in her office, paperwork already prepared. "Miss Lewis, sign here, here, and here." Miss Dwyer had indicated lines on the termination paperwork without even looking at Tamara. Your final check will be mailed within 2 weeks per state law. Turn in your uniform, badge, and locker key. Miss Dwyer, please reconsider. Tamara had tried one last time. I know I messed up by forgetting that shift, but I've been a good employee for 18 months. Can't I have one more chance? No, Miss Dwyer had stated flatly. Miss Lewis, you're unreliable. You have children who create constant scheduling conflicts. You attend school which divides your attention. This job requires people who can prioritize work over personal obligations. You've proven you can't do that. Sign the paperwork and leave. The racism in that statement, the implication that Tamara couldn't be both a good mother and a good employee, the suggestion that wanting to better herself through education was somehow wrong, had been unmistakable. But Tamara had been too defeated to fight it. She'd signed the papers, handed over her uniform and badge, and had walked out of the Silver Crown for the last time. Wednesday afternoon at 1:45 p.m., Tamara had stood outside the gleaming glass tower that housed Grant Ventures, checking and rechecking the building address Patricia had emailed. She'd dressed in the only professional outfit she owned, a black pencil skirt and white blouse she'd bought for nursing school interviews, worn but clean. She'd twisted her natural hair into a neat bun, applied minimal makeup, and had tried to look put together despite feeling like her life was falling apart. The building's lobby had been intimidatingly elegant marble floors, modern art installations, security desk, staffed by professionals in expensive suits. Tamara had approached nervously. I'm here to see Elijah Grant. I have a 2 p.m. appointment. Tamara Lewis. The security guard had checked his computer, then had handed her a visitor badge. Floor 43, Miss Lewis. The elevator on the right will take you directly there. The elevator had been glass-walled, offering stunning views of the city as it had ascended. Tamara had watched the streets fall away below, her stomach dropping not just from the elevation but from nerves about this meeting. What did a billionaire want with her? Was he going to give her some kind of reward? Or was this just going to be a brief thank you, and she'd leave with nothing changed about her desperate situation? The elevator had opened onto a reception area more luxurious than anywhere Tamara had ever been. The receptionist, an elegant Asian woman in designer clothes, had smiled warmly when Tamara had approached. You must be Miss Lewis. I'm Patricia Huang. We spoke on the phone. Mr. Grant is expecting you. Can I get you anything? Coffee? Tea? Water? Water would be great, thank you, Tamara had managed, her mouth suddenly dry with nervousness. Patricia had led her down a hallway lined with impressive artwork and through double doors into a spacious corner office with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. And there, standing behind a massive desk, had been the man Tamara had helped Friday morning. Elijah Grant had looked dramatically different than when she'd seen him slumped over his steering wheel. Now he'd been upright and healthy-looking, dressed in an expensive suit, his silver hair neatly styled. He'd smiled when he'd seen Tamara, genuine warmth in his expression. Miss Lewis, thank you so much for coming. Please, sit down. He gestured to a comfortable seating area with leather chairs and a couch, rather than making her sit across the desk from him, a deliberate choice that had made the meeting feel less formal and intimidating. Tamara had sat, accepting the water Patricia brought before the assistant had quietly left, closing the doors behind her. Mr. Grant, I'm glad you're feeling better, Tamara had said. You really scared me Friday morning. I wasn't sure you were going to make it. I wouldn't have made it if you hadn't stopped, Elijah had replied seriously. Miss Lewis, the doctors told me what happened. I have diabetes that I've been managing for years, but Friday morning I'd skipped breakfast in a rush to get to an important meeting. Combined with my blood pressure medication and the stress I'd been under, my blood sugar crashed while I was driving. If I'd stayed unconscious in that car another 15 or 20 minutes, I would have died. I'm just glad I was there, Tamara had said. Anyone with medical training would have done the same thing. But not everyone with medical training was there, Elijah had pointed out. You were. You stopped, despite clearly being on your way somewhere. Important you were rushing when you found me. I remember that much. You stayed with me, provided medical care, called 911, gave the paramedics detailed information about my condition and medications. The ER doctor said your quick assessment and the information you provided likely saved crucial treatment time. Miss Lewis, you absolutely saved my life. I'm a nursing student, Tamara had explained, or I was anyway. Stopping to help patients in distress is what we're trained to do. Elijah had caught on the past tense immediately. Was? You're no longer a nursing student? And somehow, just like with Professor Chen, Tamara had found herself explaining everything. About being a single mother working nights while attending school, about the chaotic Thursday morning when she'd stopped to help him and had arrived late to work the previous evening, about forgetting the Monday morning shift she'd picked up in all the chaos and being fired as a result, about losing her income and her children's health insurance, and probably having to drop out of nursing school despite being less than a year from graduation. Elijah had listened to all of it without interrupting, his expression growing increasingly concerned as the full picture had emerged. "Let me make sure I understand correctly," he'd said when Tamara had finished. "You stopped to save my life Friday morning. That act of compassion made you late for work Thursday night. Then the stress and chaos of that situation contributed to you forgetting a shift Monday morning. And you were fired, losing your income, your health insurance, and likely your ability to continue your education as an indirect but clear consequence of choosing to help me rather than walking past my car. I don't want you to feel guilty," Tamara had said quickly. "I made the choice to stop, and I'd make the same choice again. I couldn't just leave someone dying in their car. But yes, helping you basically cost me everything." "That's unacceptable," Elijah had stated firmly. "Miss Lewis, Tamara, you should not be punished for showing compassion. You shouldn't lose your livelihood because you saved someone's life. I cannot undo what's already happened, but I can make sure you don't suffer consequences for doing the right thing." "I'm not asking for anything," Tamara had clarified. "Patricia said you wanted to thank me in person. I came to say you're welcome and to see that you were okay. I don't expect anything beyond that." "But you should expect more than that," Elijah had replied. "Tamara, gratitude isn't just saying thank you. Gratitude is making sure the person who helped you isn't worse off for having done so. Let me ask you some questions. How much do you make annually at your hotel job, or how much did you make before being fired?" Tamara had been uncomfortable discussing her finances, but had answered honestly. "About $24,000 annually, plus health insurance benefits for my kids and me." "And your rent?" $1,200 a month. "Childcare costs?" $800 monthly for both kids. Elijah had pulled out his phone, making notes as she'd answered. "And you're how far from completing your nursing degree?" 2 semesters. I could graduate next May if I can afford to stay enrolled. "Tuition and fees?" "About $4,000 per semester, but I have some grant money that covers part of it. My out-of-pocket is usually around $2,500 per semester." Elijah had continued making notes, clearly calculating something. Finally, he'd looked up. "Here's what I'm going to do, Tamara, and I want you to listen to the entire proposal before you object or refuse. All right?" Tamara had nodded, anxiety and hope warring in her chest. "First, I'm going to pay your rent for the next year," Elijah had stated. $1,200 monthly, paid directly to your landlord so you don't have to worry about it. That's $14,400 total. Tamara had started to protest, but Elijah had held up his hand. "You promised to listen to the whole proposal. Second, I'm going to cover your childcare costs for the next year. $9,600, paid directly to your daycare provider. Third, I'm going to pay your nursing school tuition and fees for your final 2 semesters. That's approximately $5,000. Fourth, I'm going to establish a monthly stipend of $2,000 deposited directly into your account to cover your living expenses while you complete your degree. That's $24,000 over the next year." He'd paused, letting Tamara process those numbers. Her mind had been spinning. He was offering to give her over $50,000. $50,000. More money than she'd made in the past 2 years combined. "That's too much," Tamara had managed. "Mr. Grant, I appreciate the gesture, but I can't accept that amount of money. It's insane. I helped you for maybe 20 minutes. That doesn't justify $50,000. "You're right," Elijah had agreed. "It doesn't justify $50,000. It justifies much more than that. Tamara, My life is worth considerably more than $50,000. My children's father is worth more than that to them. My grandchildren's grandfather is worth more than that. The businesses I run that employ thousands of people, those people's livelihoods depend on my being alive to lead those companies. The charitable foundations I support, the millions of dollars in good those organizations do every year, that work continues because I'm alive. You saved all of that. $50,000 is insulting compared to the actual value of what you preserved by stopping to help me. But it's still more money than I've ever had at once, Tamara had protested. I don't know how to accept that. Then don't think of it as a gift, Elijah had suggested. Think of it as compensation for services rendered. You provided emergency medical care that saved my life. You're a trained nursing professional or will be very soon, and your services have value. I'm simply paying you what those services were worth to me. Emergency medical care doesn't cost $50,000, Tamara had pointed out. It does when the patient is a billionaire and the care provided saved his life, Elijah had countered with a slight smile. Tamara, I'm not going to force you to accept help, but I am asking you to consider it seriously. You lost your job because you helped me. Your children lost their health insurance because you helped me. You're facing dropping out of nursing school again because you helped me. Accepting my support isn't charity. It's justice. It's making right what went wrong as a consequence of your compassion. Tamara had sat there struggling with pride and practicality. Every instinct said she shouldn't accept this much money from a stranger. But the rational part of her brain, the part that understood she was facing homelessness and educational failure without some kind of intervention, recognized this was an actual miracle, an answer to desperate prayers she'd been sending up all week. Can I think about it? Tamara had asked. This is overwhelming. I need time to process. Of course, Elijah had agreed. But Tamara, while you're thinking, understand something clearly. This money, it's nothing to me. $50,000 is what I spend on a long weekend vacation. It's less than 1% of what I'll earn this year in passive investment income alone. Giving you this support doesn't hurt me in any measurable way, but accepting it would transform your life and your children's futures completely. When you're weighing pride against practicality, please keep that perspective in mind. He'd handed her a business card with his personal cell phone number written on it. Call me when you've decided. And Tamara, regardless of whether you accept the financial support, I want you to know that what you did Friday morning was extraordinary. You saw someone in crisis and you helped despite personal cost. That's real compassion, real character. The nursing field needs people like you. Whatever you decide about my offer, please find a way to finish your degree. You'll be an excellent nurse. Tamara had left that meeting in a daze, her mind spinning with impossible possibilities. $50,000, her rent paid for a year, childcare covered, tuition handled, monthly stipend for living expenses, everything she desperately needed offered freely by someone who claimed to owe her his life. She'd spent 2 days agonizing over the decision. She'd called Professor Chen, who'd urged her to accept. She'd talked to her mother, who'd said, "Baby, pride doesn't feed your children. If this man wants to help, let him help." She'd even consulted with her pastor, who'd reminded her that sometimes God's blessings come through unexpected people, and we dishonor those blessings by refusing them out of pride. Finally, on Friday afternoon, Tamara had called the number on Elijah's card. "Mr. Grant, it's Tamara Lewis. I've thought about your offer. If it's still available, I'd like to accept. With gratitude." "I'm so glad," Elijah had replied, genuine warmth in his voice. "Tamara, you made the right decision, not just for yourself but for your children and for your future patients who'll benefit from your nursing care. Patricia will reach out Monday to arrange the financial logistics. And Tamara, thank you, not just for saving my life, but for being willing to accept help when you needed it. That takes courage too." 3 weeks after that conversation, Tamara's life had transformed completely. Her rent was paid directly through an account Elijah had set up. Her childcare was covered the same way. $2,000 had appeared in her bank account, more money than Tamara had ever had at once in her entire life. And she'd been able to register for her spring semester classes without having to figure out how to pay for them. But Elijah hadn't stopped at financial support. He'd also connected Tamara with his personal physician, doctor, Sarah Chen, who'd arranged free health insurance for Tamara and her children through a foundation Elijah supported. He'd introduced her to other nursing students and professionals in his network, helping her build connections that would benefit her future career. He'd even had Patricia research legal options for addressing her wrongful termination from the Silver Crown, though Tamara had ultimately decided not to pursue that battle. Moving forward felt better than fighting old wounds. 6 months after helping Elijah on that rainy Thursday morning, Tamara had completed her final semester of nursing school and had passed her NCLEX licensing exam on the first attempt. She'd graduated with honors, been offered multiple job positions, and had accepted a nursing role at the same hospital where Elijah had been treated after his medical emergency, the hospital's cardiac unit, where she'd work with patients facing the same kind of crisis Elijah had survived. At her graduation ceremony, Elijah and his wife had been in attendance, cheering when Tamara's name had been called. Afterward, Elijah had introduced her to his family, his wife, Margaret, his 2 adult children, Daniel and Rebecca, his 4 grandchildren. "This is Tamara Lewis," Elijah had said proudly, "the woman who saved my life and who just became a registered nurse despite facing impossible obstacles. Tamara, my family wanted to meet you and thank you personally for giving them more time with me." Margaret had hugged Tamara with tears in her eyes. "You gave my children their father back. You gave my grandchildren more years with their grandfather. I don't know how to thank you adequately for that gift. Seeing Mr. Grant healthy and with his family is thanks enough," Tamara had replied honestly. "And he's been incredibly generous supporting my education. I literally wouldn't be graduating today without his help." "You would have found a way," Elijah had corrected gently. "You're remarkably determined and capable, Tamara. I just removed some obstacles that were preventing you from succeeding on your timeline. Everything else, the studying, the clinical work, the actual learning and licensure, that was all you." 2 years after helping Elijah, Tamara had been thriving in her nursing career. She'd bought a modest house in a safe neighborhood with good schools. Elijah had helped with the down payment as a bonus after learning she'd been named Nurse of the Year at her hospital. Maya and Jordan were both doing well academically, secure and happy in ways they'd never been when Tamara had been struggling financially. But more than just the material improvements, Tamara had gained something harder to quantify: confidence. She'd proven to herself that she could complete her degree, that she could succeed professionally, that she could provide stable, good life for her children. The years of barely surviving, of constant financial crisis, of feeling like one emergency away from complete disaster, those were behind her. And it had all started with one choice: stopping to help a stranger, despite knowing it would make her late, despite the potential consequences, despite every practical reason to keep walking. 5 years after helping Elijah Grant on that rainy Thursday morning, Tamara stood in front of a packed auditorium at the city's largest nursing conference, preparing to give the keynote address on compassionate care in crisis situations. She was now 33 years old, the nurse manager of the cardiac intensive care unit at Metro General Hospital, and widely respected in her field for both her clinical expertise and her advocacy for nursing students facing financial barriers. 5 years ago, Tamara began, her voice steady despite the hundreds of eyes watching her, I was a single mother struggling to keep my life together. I was working night shifts at a hotel while attending nursing school during the day, raising 2 young children alone, living paycheck to paycheck with zero margin for error. One morning, I saw a man collapsed in his car having a medical emergency, and I made a choice that I thought would cost me everything. She paused, making eye contact with various people in the audience. I stopped to help him. I provided emergency medical care using the training I'd received in my nursing classes. I stayed with him until paramedics arrived, and as a result, I was late to my job that evening, a job with zero tolerance for lateness, run by a supervisor with zero compassion for employees' circumstances. 3 days later, I forgot a shift I'd picked up, Tamara continued. In the chaos following that emergency and managing my sick child, the extra shift just slipped my mind completely, and I was fired. No second chance, no consideration of my 18 months of excellent work, no acknowledgement that I'd been late because I'd saved someone's life, just immediate termination. Tamara could see people in the audience nodding, clearly relating to the impossible balance of work and life responsibilities many healthcare workers faced. "I thought my life was over," Tamara admitted. "Losing that job meant losing my children's health insurance, losing my ability to pay rent, almost certainly having to drop out of nursing school for the second time. I was 28 years old, a black single mother with no safety net and no options, and I was terrified. But then I got a phone call," Tamara said, her voice warming with the memory. "The man I'd helped, Elijah Grant, who's here today and whom I'm honored to call a friend, he'd recovered, and he wanted to thank me. And when he learned I'd been fired as an indirect consequence of helping him, he did something extraordinary. He didn't just thank me with words. He provided financial support that covered my rent, my childcare, my tuition, and my living expenses for the year it took me to complete my nursing degree." She could see Elijah in the front row, his wife Margaret beside him, both smiling with obvious pride. Now, some of you might be thinking this is just a nice story about a rich person helping someone who helped them, Tamara continued. "A feel-good anecdote with a happy ending. But I want to challenge that narrative, because what Elijah did, and what I've tried to replicate through the foundation we established together, isn't about charity, it's about justice." Tamara's voice strengthened as she made her core argument. "I was punished for providing compassionate care. I lost my livelihood because I chose to save a life rather than prioritize my employer's arbitrary attendance policies. That's not just unfortunate, it's fundamentally unjust. And it's a pattern that plays out constantly in healthcare and service industries, where workers face impossible choices between human compassion and economic survival." "How many of you," Tamara asked the audience, "have been written up or reprimanded for being late because you stopped to help someone in crisis? How many have been forced to choose between providing care and keeping your job? How many have watched colleagues lose employment because they prioritized a patient or a family emergency over shift punctuality?" Hands went up throughout the auditorium, dozens of them, maybe 100, healthcare workers nodding and murmuring to each other, clearly recognizing the pattern Tamara was describing. "This is systemic," Tamara stated firmly. "This isn't just about individual bad employers, though my former supervisor, Miss Dwyer, was certainly that. This is about systems that punish compassion, that treat workers as interchangeable parts rather than humans with complex lives, that refuse to accommodate the reality that people providing care to patients often need care themselves. So here's what Elijah and I have been working on," Tamara said, her voice filling with passion. 3 years ago, we established the Compassionate Care Fund. It provides emergency financial assistance to healthcare workers and students who face economic crisis as a result of providing care to others. If you're late to work because you stopped to help someone having a medical emergency, we cover your lost wages if you're fired. If you miss a shift because your child is sick and you have no backup childcare, we pay your rent that month. If you're a nursing student who has to drop out because of financial crisis, we cover your tuition so you can stay enrolled." The audience had started applauding, but Tamara held up her hand. "But we're not just providing band-aids for a broken system, we're also advocating for policy changes. We're working with healthcare organizations and educational institutions to implement compassion, leave policies, protected time off for employees who provide emergency assistance to others. We're pushing for flexible attendance policies that don't punish single parents for childcare crises. We're demanding that healthcare employers recognize that people who care for others professionally often need support, caring for their own families." Tamara's voice grew more intense. "And we're specifically focused on supporting Black and brown healthcare workers and students because we face disproportionate barriers. We're more likely to be single parents. We're more likely to be fired for attendance issues that white colleagues get warnings for. We're more likely to work multiple jobs while attending school because we don't have family wealth to fall back on. We're more likely to drop out of healthcare education programs despite strong academic performance because financial crises make completion impossible." She paused for emphasis. "The healthcare system desperately needs more Black and brown providers. Studies show that patient outcomes improve when patients receive care from providers who look like them, who understand their cultural contexts, who've lived similar experiences. But we keep losing talented black and brown students and workers because our systems refuse to accommodate the economic realities of their lives. That has to change. Tamara's voice softened slightly. In the 5 years since Elijah helped me complete my nursing degree, the Compassionate Care Fund has supported over 300 healthcare workers and students facing financial crises. We've prevented 47 nursing students from dropping out due to economic emergencies. We've covered emergency childcare costs for 62 healthcare workers facing unexpected care gaps. We've paid rent, utilities, and car repairs for dozens of people who would otherwise have become homeless while trying to care for patients professionally. But more importantly, Tamara continued, we've changed institutional policies at 17 hospitals and 3 nursing schools in this city. We've helped implement compassion leave, flexible attendance policies, emergency childcare funds, and financial assistance programs for students. We've proven that healthcare organizations can support their workers without sacrificing patient care. In fact, patient care improves when workers feel supported rather than constantly terrified of being fired for human circumstances. Tamara looked directly at Elijah again. 5 years ago, Elijah Grant saved my life by giving me the resources to complete my education. But I'd already saved his life by stopping to help when he was in medical crisis. We saved each other, and now we're working together to save others, not through individual rescue, which isn't sustainable, but through systemic change that prevents people from needing rescue in the first place. So, here's my challenge to everyone in this room, Tamara concluded. If you're a healthcare worker or student facing impossible circumstances, apply for support from our fund or similar resources. Don't let pride prevent you from accepting help. If you're an administrator or employer, examine your policies and ask whether they punish compassion and accommodate the reality that your workers are human beings with complex lives. And if you're someone with resources, financial, political, social, use them to create systemic change rather than just feeling good about individual charitable acts. Compassionate care, Tamara finished, doesn't just mean caring for patients. It means caring for the people who provide that care. It means building systems that support rather than punish healthcare workers. It means recognizing that the best clinical care comes from providers who aren't constantly terrified of economic disaster. That's the future I'm working toward, and I invite all of you to join me in building it. The applause when Tamara finished had been thunderous. Multiple people had approached her afterward wanting to know more about the Compassionate Care Fund, wanting to share their own stories of being punished for showing compassion, wanting to help expand the work to other cities and states. But the most meaningful moment had come when a young black woman, probably in her early 20s, had waited until the crowd cleared before approaching Tamara nervously. "Miss Lewis, I'm Jasmine. I'm a first-year nursing student and a single mother with a 2-year-old daughter. I've been thinking about dropping out because I can't afford childcare and tuition and rent all at once. But hearing your story that you faced the same struggles and found a way through it made me think maybe I can do this too. Can I apply for support from your fund?" Tamara had hugged this young woman who reminded her so much of herself 5 years earlier. "Yes, absolutely. But more than that, let me personally mentor you through the nursing program. I know exactly what you're facing, and I don't want you to have to navigate it alone the way I did." That conversation had led to Tamara expanding the Compassionate Care Fund's work to include formal mentorship programs, pairing current healthcare workers with students facing similar circumstances, creating support networks so people didn't have to struggle in isolation. 10 years after helping Elijah Grant, Tamara had been promoted to Vice President of Nursing at Metro General Hospital, the first black woman to hold that position in the hospital's 100-year history. She'd used that platform to implement systemic changes throughout the hospital system: comprehensive family leave policies, on-site childcare for employees, emergency financial assistance funds, tuition reimbursement programs, and flexible scheduling that accommodated workers' complex lives. "You've transformed this organization," the hospital CEO had told Tamara during her promotion announcement, "not just through your clinical leadership, but through your advocacy for supporting our workforce. Employee retention has increased 30% since you implemented these programs. Staff satisfaction scores are the highest they've been in 2 decades, and patient outcomes have improved because our nurses aren't constantly stressed about losing their jobs over human circumstances. Tamara, you've proven that caring for workers and providing excellent patient care aren't competing priorities, they're interdependent. The Compassionate Care Fund had also expanded nationally, now operating in 12 cities, with plans to reach 20 by the following year. They'd helped over 2,000 healthcare workers and students, prevented hundreds from dropping out of education programs or leaving the profession entirely, and had influenced policy changes at dozens of healthcare organizations. Elijah had remained deeply involved in the foundation's work, serving as board chair and primary donor. But he'd also recruited other wealthy philanthropists to the cause, expanding the funding base beyond his personal resources. The foundation had become sustainable, institutional, capable of continuing long after both Elijah and Tamara were gone. "You know what I'm most proud of?" Elijah had said during the foundation's 10-year anniversary celebration. "Not just that we've helped 2,000 individuals, though that's significant. I'm most proud that we've changed how healthcare organizations think about supporting their workforce. We've proven that preventing workers from falling into economic crisis is better than trying to help them recover from it. We've demonstrated that policies accommodating human circumstances improve outcomes for everyone, workers, patients, and organizations. That systemic change will impact millions of people over time, far beyond the individuals we've directly supported." Tamara's children had thrived over those 10 years. Maya was now 16, an honor student planning to attend college on academic scholarship, interested in pursuing pre-med with dreams of becoming a doctor. Jordan was 14, passionate about technology and engineering, already taking advanced computer science classes. Both children had grown up with stability Tamara had never experienced as a child: secure housing, consistent meals, good schools, extracurricular activities, college funds, and a mother who was present and engaged rather than constantly exhausted from working multiple jobs. "Mom, I don't really remember when things were bad," Jordan had said one evening during a family dinner celebrating Tamara's promotion to vice president. "Maya remembers more than I do, but from what you've told us, we were like really poor, right? Like worried about having enough food poor?" "We were," Tamara had confirmed. "There were days I chose between buying you both dinner or paying for gas to get to work. Days I couldn't afford your daycare and had to beg neighbors to watch you. Days I cried in parking lots because everything felt impossible." "That's wild," Jordan had said, looking around their comfortable home, not luxurious, but safe and pleasant, and theirs. "This seems so normal now. It's hard to imagine it being different." "That's because you've had 10 years of stability," Tamara had explained. "But Jordan, Maya, I need you to understand something. The only reason we have this stability is because I made a choice to help someone when I easily could have walked past. And that person chose to help me in return rather than just saying thank you. Everything we have came from those two choices, my compassion and Mr. Grant's generosity. But also your hard work," Maya had interjected. "Mom, Mr. Grant gave you money to finish nursing school. But you're the one who studied and passed your classes and became an excellent nurse. You're the one who got promoted over and over because you're good at your job. You're the one who built the foundation that helps other people. Mr. Grant opened a door, but you walked through it, and then you opened doors for thousands of other people. That's you, not just his money." Tamara had felt tears forming. "Thank you, baby. You're right, it took both. Someone with resources removing barriers, and someone with determination making the most of that opportunity. That's the model we're trying to replicate through the foundation. Removing barriers for people who have the determination and capability, but lack the resources. That's how you create systemic change." 15 years after helping Elijah Grant, Tamara had been invited to speak at the nursing school where she'd completed her degree. The school had established a scholarship program named in her honor, the Tamara Lewis Compassionate Care Scholarship, providing full tuition, childcare support, and living stipends for single parents pursuing nursing degrees. "When I was a student here," Tamara had told the assembled scholarship recipients, "I was constantly terrified. Terrified of not having enough money for rent. Terrified of my car breaking down and not being able to get to class or work. terrified that one sick kid or one transportation problem would derail everything I'd worked toward. That fear made it hard to focus on learning, hard to be fully present in clinical rotations, hard to believe I actually deserved to be here completing a nursing degree. You shouldn't have to carry that fear, Tamara had continued. Yes, nursing school is academically demanding. Yes, you'll be challenged clinically and intellectually. But you shouldn't also have to worry about keeping a roof over your children's heads while you're learning. That's what this scholarship provides, not just tuition, but the comprehensive support that removes fear, so you can focus on becoming excellent nurses. One scholarship recipient, a single mother named Keisha with 3 young children, had raised her hand tentatively. Miss Lewis, how did you keep going when everything felt impossible? Because some days I wake up and I don't know how I'm going to make it through. Tamara had felt that question in her soul, remembering so many mornings when she'd felt exactly that, overwhelmed. Honestly, some days I didn't keep going gracefully. Some days I cried in bathrooms between classes. Some days I snapped at my kids because I was so stressed. Some days I wanted to quit and just find any full-time job that paid the bills. But what kept me moving forward was knowing that finishing my nursing degree was the only path to real stability for my children, that their future depended on me not giving up, even when everything felt impossible. But here's what I learned, Tamara had added. You can't do it completely alone. I tried that, initially refusing to ask for help, convinced I had to prove I could handle everything independently, and that nearly destroyed me. What changed was accepting help when it was offered. From Mr. Grant financially, from Professor Chen academically, from my mother with childcare, from classmates with study support. Building a support network isn't weakness, it's wisdom. So Keisha, my advice is this: accept help. Ask for support when you need it. Use every resource available, including this scholarship. And know that needing help doesn't make you less capable, it makes you human. 20 years after that rainy Thursday morning when Tamara had stopped to help a stranger in crisis, she stood with Elijah Grant at a press conference, announcing a major policy victory they'd worked toward for years. The state legislature had just passed the Compassionate Healthcare Workers Act, establishing protected leave for healthcare workers who provide emergency assistance to others, prohibiting termination based solely on attendance issues related to family care responsibilities, and creating state-funded childcare subsidies specifically for healthcare workers and students. This legislation will impact tens of thousands of healthcare workers and students across our state, the governor said during the signing ceremony. It recognizes that people who care for others professionally deserve support caring for their own families. It acknowledges that punishing compassion is counterproductive and unjust, and it establishes standards other states will hopefully follow. Elijah had been invited to speak as the primary philanthropist who'd funded the advocacy campaign. 20 years ago, a nursing student named Tamara Lewis saved my life. She stopped to help me when I was having a medical emergency, despite knowing it would make her late for work. And she was fired as a consequence of that compassion. Today, we're establishing legal protections ensuring no healthcare worker in this state will face termination for making the same choice. Tamara made choosing human life over employer convenience. Then Tamara had spoken, her voice strong with hard-won authority. I wish this law had existed 20 years ago when I was fired for helping Mr. Grant. But since it didn't, we had to build the political will to create it. This legislation represents 15 years of advocacy, collecting stories from hundreds of healthcare workers who faced similar circumstances, building coalitions across labor unions and professional organizations, educating legislators about the real-world impact of punitive attendance policies. But this isn't the end, Tamara had emphasized. This is one state. We need federal legislation protecting all healthcare workers. We need comprehensive family leave policies. We need universal childcare so parents can work and study without impossible financial stress. We need to restructure how we think about work, care, and economic security. This law is a significant victory, but the work continues. 25 years after helping Elijah Grant, Tamara had been invited to receive the Presidential Medal of Freedom, the nation's highest civilian honor, for her work, transforming healthcare workforce policies and supporting thousands of healthcare workers and students through the Compassionate Care Fund. Standing in the White House, receiving the medal from the president, Tamara had thought about that terrified 28-year-old single mother who'd cried in a parking lot after being fired, convinced her life was over. That woman could never have imagined this moment, receiving national recognition, having changed policies impacting millions of workers, having helped thousands of individuals complete their healthcare education and build stable lives. Tamara Lewis exemplifies the best of American values, the president had said during the ceremony. Compassion, even at personal cost, determination to overcome impossible obstacles, commitment to using her success, helping others facing similar struggles. Her work through the Compassionate Care Fund has supported over 10,000 healthcare workers and students over 25 years. But more importantly, her advocacy has changed laws and policies in 38 states, establishing protections and support systems benefiting millions of healthcare workers and their families. In her acceptance speech, Tamara had returned to the story that had defined her adult life. 25 years ago, I made a choice that I thought would destroy my future. I stopped to help a stranger, and I lost my job as a result. But that stranger, Elijah Grant, who's here today, he made a different choice. He didn't just thank me and move on. He provided comprehensive support that enabled me to complete my education and build the career that's brought me to this moment. What I've learned, Tamara had continued, is that transformative change requires both compassion and justice. Compassion to help individuals facing crisis. Justice to change systems that create those crises in the first place. Through the Compassionate Care Fund, we've provided compassion to 10,000 individuals. Through our advocacy work, we've helped create justice for millions by changing policies that punish workers for human circumstances. So I accept this honor, Tamara had concluded, not just for myself but for every healthcare worker and student who's faced impossible choices between compassion and economic survival. For every single parent who's been fired for childcare emergencies. For every nursing student who's dropped out despite strong academics because financial crisis made completion impossible. For every person who's been punished for showing human kindness. This medal belongs to all of you, and I promise to keep fighting until no one has to choose between compassion and survival, until care workers are cared for as well as they care for others. 30 years after that rainy Thursday morning, Tamara and Elijah had stood together at the same spot where she'd found him collapsed in his car 3 decades earlier. The city had installed a historical marker at the location. On this spot 30 years ago, nursing student Tamara Lewis provided emergency medical care to Elijah Grant, saving his life and beginning a partnership that would transform healthcare workforce policy and support systems across the nation. 30 years, Elijah had marveled, looking at the marker. Tamara, do you ever think about what would have happened if you'd walked past my car that morning? If you'd prioritized getting to your job on time over helping a stranger? I think about it sometimes, Tamara had admitted. I'd probably have kept my hotel housekeeping job. Maybe I'd have eventually finished nursing school, though without your support it would have taken significantly longer. But I definitely wouldn't be where I am now, Vice President of Nursing at Metro General, running a national foundation, having changed healthcare policy in dozens of states. All of that came from the choice to stop and help you, and from your choice to support me comprehensively rather than just saying thank you. I'm the one who should be grateful, Elijah had replied. Tamara, you didn't just save my life physically, you showed me what real compassion looks like, helping despite personal cost, not because you expected anything in return, but because it was the right thing to do. That example has shaped how I think about using wealth and privilege. Everything we've built through the foundation, all the policy changes we've advocated for, that all traces back to your example of choosing compassion even when it cost you everything. We saved each other, Tamara had said simply. I provided emergency medical care that saved your life. You provided economic support that saved mine. And then we used that experience to save thousands of others, not through individual rescue, but through systemic change. That's the real story of these 30 years. Not rescue, but reciprocal care and justice. Standing there at the spot where everything had changed 3 decades earlier, looking at the historical marker commemorating that transformative morning, Tamra had understood that sometimes the most important moments look like disasters at the time: a medical emergency, a firing, sitting in a parking lot convinced your life is over. Those crisis moments create opportunities for compassion, for connection, for relationships that transform not just individual lives, but entire systems, affecting millions of people across generations. One choice to help despite personal cost, one choice to support comprehensively rather than just thank superficially. From those 2 choices had come 30 years of transformed lives, changed policies, systemic justice for millions of healthcare workers who would never know the names Tamara Lewis or Elijah Grant, but who benefited from the systems they'd built together. That was the real miracle of that rainy Thursday morning, not that a billionaire had rescued a struggling single mother, though that narrative was simpler and more satisfying. The real miracle was 2 people meeting in crisis and choosing reciprocal care, building genuine partnership, using their combined resources, creating justice rather than just providing charity, transforming systems rather than just helping individuals. And 30 years later, that work continued through the thousands of healthcare workers and students supported by the Compassionate Care Fund, through the millions benefiting from changed policies in 38 states, through the mentorship programs and advocacy campaigns and institutional transformations, all traced back to one morning when a nursing student chose compassion despite knowing it would cost her everything, and when the person she helped chose justice by ensuring that compassion didn't destroy her life.